Succes i veterinær praksis, podcast nummer 108. Hej, velkommen til. Søren Pejstrup her. Jeg er dyrlæge, og det er mig, der har startet det her projekt, Succes i veterinær praksis. Det er et projekt, der består af den her podcast, du lytter til lige nu. Den er gratis at abonnere på, og det kan du gøre i en app på din telefon for eksempel, eller hvis du bruger Spotify, så kan du finde podcasten frem der, så får du helt automatisk nye episoder hver søndag. For det andet så er det sådan et e-mail-nyhedsbrev, hvor jeg holder fokus på at levere fagligt relevant indhold og protokoller og pdf og tips og tricks og sådan lidt opdatering fra praksislivet ude i den virkelige verden. Fokus er til dyrlæger og til særligt interesserede veterinærsygeplejersker. Hvis ikke allerede du er med, kan du tilmelde dig over på hjemmesiden. For det tredje indeholder det her projekt en serie online-kurser med specifikke læringsmål. De koster lidt at få adgang til, medmindre at du er studerende, så giver jeg gratis adgang, så længe du er det i hvert fald. Og som podcastlytter, der kan du også få 4 uger gratis adgang til online-kurserne over på hjemmesiden. Det finder du over på SIVP.dk/4 uger. SIVP.dk/4 uger, så får du 4 ugers gratis adgang. Dagens podcast, den er målrettet måske nyuddannede, eller måske ligefrem dyrlægestuderende, som er lige på kanten til at skulle ud i det virkelige liv. Du kan også få glæde af den her podcast, hvis du har været i praksis i nogle år, men synes, at det går lidt sløvt med at finde patienter, eller at du har lidt svært ved sådan at få nok af de patienter, som du synes er interessant. Der er flere fordele ved at have fokus på sit personlige brand, og det der lidt er tanken her, det er, at uanset om du vil det eller ej, så har du et personligt brand. Dine klienter, din chef og dine kollegaer ser på dig på en bestemt måde, uanset om du synes, det er fedt eller ej. Men ved at have lidt ekstra fokus på det, så kan du måske bedre kontrollere, hvad der kommer ud, og hvad du så får igen. Men det skal vi grave os mere ned i dagens interview, så lad os bare kaste os ud i det. Hi Caitlin, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. This is my first international podcast.
Yeah, but you've done a couple of podcasts before. That's one of the ways I know you is because you performed on the other podcasts as well.
Yep, I've been on a few. It's my preferred method to be on a podcast, but not to have a podcast. So I know it's a lot of work on.
and you do a good job. So hopefully, I'm looking forward to our talk today. I was going to do an introduction, but I have a difficult time getting all the interesting stuff that you are involved in down on paper. So maybe you should do the introduction, please, and mention what you feel is good and what it is that you're up to.
Sure. So I am a veterinarian, and I own a company called the Social DVM. DVM in the U.S. is Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, and for like all but one school. I guess you guys have different letters, right?
Yeah, but we use DVM as well.
Oh, okay. Well, then never mind. So yeah, so I am the Social DVM, and my primary focus is to help veterinarians and veterinary team members navigate social media and digital marketing efforts. So I speak, I have a couple of groups, I have some classes, and I blog about different topics and tutorials, just to help vets kind of understand and not be afraid of those things, and hopefully succeed in connecting with their clients online. So I'm just a big geek, and it lets me do veterinary medicine plus be a big nerd at the same time. Mm-hmm. So,
but you're practicing vet as well, right?
Yes. Very. These days, it's probably the smallest part of my career, which is both good and bad. So I'm only in the office now 1, sometimes 2 days a week at most, and the rest of the time I'm focusing on this stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you do speaking as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So None in your country yet. Maybe someday.
Maybe you should. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to, but yes. So yeah, I speak at some of the bigger conventions, but all the way down to smaller events. Truthfully, like my favorite speaking is when I get a small group of people and they have their computers and we can really just dive into it and get something done, and they can answer questions, and it's a fun environment. So I do the full gamut, I suppose.
And we had a couple of different topics we talked about for our discussion today, but you preferred the personal branding one, and we could of course talk of a whole lot of social media and blogging and what have you, and it's a big passion of mine as well, so we could talk for hours on that without a problem. But why do you feel the personal branding topic is the most important?
I feel like that topic has just emerged and really changed in the last, probably 12, 18 months, that it's become, number one, more recognized as an issue in general, whether you're using social media or not. But number two, I do see a lot of the younger vets coming up in that realm, and they're coming also from such a generational difference too, of like having always had social media or technology. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting because a couple of things. Number one, these younger vets and some not younger vets are really embracing the concept of personal branding. But then on the other side of the coin, practice owners, more of the business owners or corporate leaders, even if they don't embrace it, they have to understand it, right? And figure out how to navigate that and accept it or not. So it's, depending on who you ask, it's a little bit of a controversial topic, I guess. So it seems like a more fun one.
But usually when I mention the word branding, and we don't have a straightforward translation into Danish, so we actually just use the English word in Danish as well. So that's maybe a good and bad. But when I mention branding, people will the thoughts will usually just go straight to a logo and a brand new website and a lot of marketing materials. But that's not necessarily the point, is it?
No, not at all. So, yeah, what you mentioned is more of what I would call the brand kit, right? Which is just all the visual elements of your brand. So the logo and the font and the color scheme, and maybe you have a tagline or something like that, which is all important. But if you're talking about it from a personal standpoint, as a veterinarian, there's only so many dog and cat logos that can really represent your brand, so to speak. So it's more about what you stand for and what differentiates you. And what's neat about using that in the social media realm is that you can be different. We all have the same education. We all have the same skills and the same access to pets and patients and further tools in our work as doctors. But your passion is what's going to make you different and make you stand out and make people want to care, right? Like, why are you interesting? Why are you better than, the guy right down the street? So branding is a pretty deep concept, I guess. I feel like it. But it's one that you have to navigate, I think, and really put some thought into it and not just say, okay, I have a brand and I have a logo, so here I am. Like, it's not so meaningful.
But shouldn't it be the clinic that has a brand and a logo and a website? Why is personal branding important, and what's the difference between personal and clinic branding?
Yeah, so here's where it gets controversial, right? Yeah. So, because really, it depends. And I will say this with one caveat, which is this is case by case specific. Right. So there are going to be some clinics out there that A, totally don't allow this, or B, it's not a good idea. It's just not a good idea for the demographic or for the practice or for the people involved. But for some people and some practices, when we think about the idea of branding, when you think about how your clients come to you, they don't come to you because they care about your hospital name. They come to you because you are their vet and they like you the best, right? Like, in my practice, I'm lucky I'm a part of a bigger practice, and there are 5 to 6 veterinarians there, and they range in age from 27 to 62. They have been there from anywhere from 1 year to 35 years, and they all have different interests and passions. So, for instance, one of the veterinarians, his passion is surgery. Like that, he is our orthopedic guy, right? And he loves that, and he is really good at that, and people know that about him. And he also has this like super side passion of collecting antique tractors and stuff like that, right? But if they come to me, they know I'm not going to touch them with a 10-foot pole on a surgery table. Like, I don't do surgery anymore. So that is not my strong suit. But I am going to be the one that talks to them about my passion in practice is medical management of orthopedic disease or joint disease, and more of the my second passion would be cats in general. I'm the cat whisperer of our practice, right? So we are totally two different people, and we are both, I would like to think, both very good veterinarians, and we're good with our clients, and we're good with those patients. But we're totally two different people, but we're under one clinic. So when we think about how those people are going to connect with us, the cat lover is not really going to connect with my colleague. She would. I mean, he sees cats too. I don't want to put him out there as like being a cat hater. He's going to listen to this.
Be careful.
I'm the one that's going to take them into our cat-only room, and I'm going to play the cat calming music, and I'm going to spend all the time and connect with them and talk about how cute they are. And I'm probably going to take their picture and put it on the social media channels, which he has no idea where those even live. And, we are going to make a connection. But that is very different than a client that has, okay, they're coming in because their dog needs a TPLO. Well, they need to talk to him, right? So that's an example of how I feel like that can be different. But we both present good quality medicine, good patient care, and a good representation of this. And I would argue that we both have a good contribution to that practice. Yeah. But we have very different personal patterns.
So my mind actually goes to my own boss, and he's a very skilled surgeon as well. And he does TTAs and all that stuff and fractures and that. And he's a bit of he's not shy, but he's not an maybe as. I try to say this without pointing fingers, but he always he looks a bit tired when I run around with my phone, and I like to take pictures and videos of what he does. And he likes more to be in the exam room talking to clients, or maybe in the OR to do his surgeries. And he's done nothing to build a brand, but he still has one. Is what I'm getting out of this, because people will see. I've read about you on social media because someone else talked about you, and I needed to go see you, and I'd really like to have you examine my dog, and they would prefer him over me. Why I don't understand why, but they would, and because they like him. So is that a personal brand that he's built without actually knowing that's what he's done?
Yes, for sure. They're just not publicizing it, So both of these, your example and mine, are the same. They're both essential to the clinic brand. They are part of the clinic brand. They have their own personal brand, but now the choice is, do we actually promote that? Mm-hmm. For me and for you, we certainly have, right? And, so on my clinic page, I'm the one doing the videos, right? And probably you as well. Mm-hmm. So it's a more forward-facing brand. Yeah. And whether or not you choose to take that and to share that out is different. So, but it doesn't mean that they have any less of a brand, because they're just not showing it off, I suppose, as much as
he doesn't feel the need, I guess, to show himself off, and that's a quality in itself.
It is.
Well, but it's not mine. But it's a quality. Yes.
Same.
But you can actually, the basis of this is that you can actually have a personal brand without knowing or without actually working on it, or without actually wanting to have one.
Right. Sorry, kids, you all have one. Yeah. but the thing that's neat about it is that there is an opportunity there, right? There's an opportunity to connect with some clients that may not know about our brand. So that's where the big opportunity is there's people out there that don't know about our brand, but we can connect with them and use social media and use digital marketing to hopefully get the word out about them. And, my biggest passion about any of this, people will say, well, oh, you're not in the clinic all the time. And, why would you be doing this? And why is this important to you? More important than being a veterinarian? And I would argue that it's not, but it's just a different facet, because ultimately, I feel like social media and digital marketing of any kind is going to help us connect with clients. And that does two things. So it educates clients and makes them better pet owners, right? We have an opportunity to do that. And a better educated pet owner means a healthier animal, which is still my primary goal as a veterinarian, right? And the second thing it does is it brings them into our practice more. And that's good for the pet also. And it's good for vets too, right? We have an opportunity to, of course, we are businesses, so we have to earn a living just like anybody else. So I think that's where personal branding, and it's another avenue of making that connection, which ultimately leads to a healthier pet and hopefully a healthier practice.
So you can actually, there's there's a couple of benefits to this. So you can use your brand to tell people why you're better, and maybe get them into your practice because of that. And maybe you can select patients as well, it sounds like, because you can select more cats and your colleague can select more surgery patients. So you can actually select some of the patients that you prefer working with as well.
Yeah, ideally.
Yeah.
I'm like a crazy cat lady. I do like dogs too. I like the cats as well.
Yes. So, but I'm a bit of the same. I would always try to get it before the other vets into the exam room if there's a cat over the dog. So, even though I like them both, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so let's say that we buy into that we all have a personal brand and we see that's some benefit in it. How do we take control over it, or how do we work with it? I was going to say mindfully, but with intention. That was what.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing that you have to start with is you have to think about that. So, like I said, we all probably have a brand, whether we know it or we don't, right? But it does require some reflection and introspection to decide: is this the brand that I want? Is this the brand that I am living and want to continue to live? And if it is, great, and then you're set, right? You can keep going. But if not, you need to really, really think about that and fine tune. What is your brand? What is important to you? What are your interests? And maybe they're not super specific. Like maybe they're not necessarily that you're the cat whisperer. Maybe it's, you just really, really like client communication, or you really, really like connecting with clients on a more personal level, or maybe you really, really like blood work. I don't know. Like there's, whatever it is, but you need to really decide that and own that. And then once you have that, I feel like the next step has to be strategy. So how do you want to do this? So, and that might really dictate what platforms you use. So maybe social media is the way to go, but maybe it's not. Maybe blogging is the way to go. Maybe vlogging is better for you. Maybe it's a very visual topic.
Vlogging is where you do blogs with video instead of text.
Right.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of veterinarians, most of us are pretty science-minded and not maybe the best writers, right? So maybe vlogging is easier, but then that's a fear too. Like, are you comfortable being on camera? Mm-hmm. Some people are not. Some people are. So you have to decide. But then you have to think about, what is your ideal client? What is your your target demographic and where do they live. It doesn't matter if you want to vlog all the time and only be on video. If your target demographic and the people around you, geographically or other, don't watch videos, or aren't on Twitter. It makes no sense to me to, and this could go for a clinic brand as well. It makes no sense to me to spend any time or effort on your Twitter presence if your clients don't use Twitter, right? So you have to kind of identify those aspects too and figure out where you're going to do it. And you can't do it all, right? There's so much out there. You could vlog, you could blog, you could be on Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and Pinterest and Twitter, and you can't do all of it. So I think it's important to figure out what your brand is, what your strategy is, and who's your client, who are you trying to connect with, and where are they at, and then chase that.
But you also mentioned some of the younger vets and some of the new grads that come out struggling to find certainty that they're good enough and they know how to behave in a clinic. They have all the science and all the knowledge, but handling clients and handling an angry cat, they don't have too much experience in that and don't feel that they have necessarily a brand on know if they even have an interest in certain topics. So how would you advise the younger vets and new grads?
Yeah, well, and I mean that does present a couple of opportunities too. I mean, it doesn't have to be. I guess I shouldn't say that it has to be hard and fast. That you have to have this strategy, but you have to be intentional in terms of being professional, right? So that's still number one. Is trying to remember that you have a professional image and reputation, and unfortunately, thanks to the technology of screenshots, nothing is anything you put out there is permanent. So you need to kind of keep that in mind. But I think the things that are interesting and bring you some degree of happiness, or you feel that would bring other people a degree of happiness or interest, are worth pursuing, but a professional manner. I think the biggest problem I see with young vets coming out is that they have transformed or they've built their brand, so to speak, off of a personal reputation or image. And maybe that's not so much just veterinary focused. And maybe that's a concern if you have, pictures from your college days and your wild videos and things like that also on there. So I think that's the biggest concern that I see with some of the young vets is that, I feel bad for them in some degree. I'm super glad that there's not social media from my college days. I don't know about you.
I've been through quite a lot of it and trying to clean some of the worst. Right? I haven't taken everything out because I feel that I need to be a complete human being. And I, of course, have completely regular college days as everybody else. So I've taken some of the worst down.
Yeah, just some of it. Yeah, just clean it up a little.
Yeah, the ones where I was naked primarily, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Some of the people listening to this will know that I performed completely naked in front of 700 people in a play that was that's on every year in the vets hospital. It was fun, and it was before social media was really a thing, but it's still on video. So I don't. Someday is going to end up on YouTube. I don't. I'll take it from there. But the things I've controlled, I've taken down.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a tangent. Completely irrelevant tangent.
This podcast got a lot more interesting. Yeah. So I think that's it's just something that I think some vets need to be mindful of. But just because when the older demographic is still there, right? So there's still going to be viewership that maybe would hold that against them, so to speak, or more importantly, employers that would hold that against them. So that's a little bit of it. But I think it's okay to be somewhat generalized as they're starting out, right? Because social media and marketing still, if nothing else, it gives them an opportunity to connect with new clients as they're building their own clients on their client list, so to speak. But it gives them an opportunity to connect with other veterinarians. I mean, look at us. Like we talked about earlier, that we've been connected for several years and we're thousands of miles away because we had a common interest. And I think that's helpful. Mm-hmm. And being a vet is not easy, right? And it can be some big challenges. So I think having those connections, of course, the personal ones are always better, but like in person, right? But I think they can still benefit from social and those connections at an early stage of their career as well.
Yeah. So would you advise them to pick a couple of topics? So if they're into dermatology and they feel like that is interesting, they try to post cases on that and maybe forget about the pigs and other farm animals, or can you have the whole thing?
Oh gosh, that's a $1 million question. I just feel like there's so much of it out there. I do think that having a focus is important for the most successful. Is it wrong to have like one of everything and be a derm lover and also love pigs and cows and other things outside the clinic and do it all? No, but I don't think that they will find it as long-term rewarding and successful as one that's a little bit more focused.
Yeah. But some of the students are challenged because they, of course, have to go through everything because they're taught on everything. And in Copenhagen, they're not allowed to take pictures of patients,
right.
or not to post pictures of patients anyway.
Right.
So they need to be very creative in finding something to write about, or do videos about, or do whatever.
Right. And that gets a lot easier when they get out, for sure. But there are some vet students that are doing a great job of it. And the vet student experience is just so much different than the veterinarian experience, right? So I think there's still, the people that are following them at the student level are more likely to be their peers and things like that. And it may just kind of serve as an early foundation for their pages and their accounts. But eventually, once they're out, they're probably going to have a lot more content, which is more fun, and B, have an opportunity to focus it a little bit more. But there's some really interesting vet student accounts. Actually, some of my most favorite Instagram accounts are vet student accounts because
I follow a couple of them on Instagram, and some of them do this huge note taking and do these massive drawings of hearts and endocrine diseases, and it wasn't wow. I actually learned something from that because I'm a visual learner, so that it's really good. But some of them have put very much effort into something they post.
Oh yeah, and their study methods and tips and things like that I think is really interesting. And I do wish it had been around for me for that during that time. I didn't have social media until probably my last year of vet school, I think. Yeah. So that was before Instagram. I'm really dating myself here, but
but I'm before Instagram as well. So
I feel better.
I actually think I graduated before you did. So
in 2009.
Okay, I'm from it.
Okay. Right. Yeah. So,
but when you talk about strategy, is that a strategy to just focus on an Instagram account and post on cases you see and notes you take and experiences you have? Is that a strategy, or is that more than that?
Well, that's a tricky one. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty it's a pretty broad strategy. Of course, you could narrow it down all the way to like, okay, I'm going to post this many times per week, and I'm going to do this many vlogs or videos, and I'm going to have a live this time, and once a month I will do this. There's all kinds of things, and it doesn't have to be that specific, but I think in general, having that focus of saying, okay, I think that Instagram is going to be my platform, and that's where I'm going to focus my efforts, and saying, okay, and maybe my main focus is these 1 to 3 topics or interests, of course, sprinkling in other stuff, as it makes you human, right? Because as you share, like you mentioned, like having your own life and being a total package person, I think that's reasonable. But I think to some degree, just making that focus is a key strategy.
Yeah, but you don't even. It's easier to start with an Instagram account because you can open one up in like less than 3 seconds. But starting a blog, you can actually start a blog within 3 minutes as well, and there's videos online how to do that, and it's very easy. But it seems like a more daunting task.
Right? It's more of a like, oh, this is an assignment, right?
Yeah.
This is a project, as opposed to being like, here's a picture, boop. And that's why Instagram, I think, is. I think that's why we're seeing it embraced by a lot more people, is that it's less formal, it's less daunting, and it's so visual. Like, I don't know. I think the attention span of our entire, not just our nation, since this is an international podcast, but like of the world, right? It's just decreasing by the day because there's so much competition and so much other stuff out there, right? And so when you're scrolling through, how many times do people read a blog, right? How many times do they have to click off, right? They have to leave where they were to get to that. And so with Instagram, like that's the point, is just scrolling, right? And to be visual and to be lighthearted and fun. And then just in today's society, I feel like that's what a lot of people are looking for when they're looking at their phones, right? They're looking for very casual, very informal, but fun, right? And quick and easy. So I think that's why Instagram is rapidly growing and rapidly becoming the favorite.
Of course, there's Facebook, and you mentioned Twitter as well. But is there other platforms that could be used in here? I think it kind of depends on your demographic. I know there's certainly some people that Twitter has just been huge for and absolutely worked. I don't see that so much for clinics, at all. In fact, I don't think I know any clinics that are like, yes, Twitter brought me 4 new clients this month or something like that. I feel like Facebook and Instagram are 99% of what veterinarians as individuals or as practices have an opportunity to use. Snapchat was, kind of fun for a hot minute for a lot of people, and there's still some people using it. Pinterest, same way. I think YouTube would probably be the third one, just because of, again, being more video and visual. But I think that's kind of about it. And I think that's important to think about. Like if when you're deciding this, where do you spend the most time? If you spend the most time on Facebook, well, maybe it makes more sense for you to say, okay, well, I like Facebook. Do my clients like Facebook? If the answer is yes, then it's a no-brainer, right? But again, you have to, part of that strategy and part of that introspection also has to be, what's your goal? What's your return on your investment there? You could spend a lot of time and money on these things, right? And if you're not meeting the goal, whatever that is, it's time to reevaluate. But can you talk a little bit more about return on investment when we're talking about personal branding?
Yeah. Clear my throat for this one. Yeah.
That's a huge one, maybe.
It's a huge one. I could talk about return on investment all day long because I mostly end up talking about it from the clinic perspective, but that's a whole nother discussion. But in regards to personal branding, so that's something that you have to set out with. Like, what is your goal? Is your goal, okay, I have 90,000 followers. Well, so what? What's the point of that, right? Did that help you get a job? Did that help you, feel like you educated a client? Is that for your own personal entertainment and outlet? It's going to be different for everybody. For me, my Instagram is very much just an outlet. I don't have a main huge goal in having an Instagram. It's some degree of like brand awareness, I suppose. But it's more fun, right? It's definitely a different goal for me. So it's fun for me to be on there. I like connecting with people and seeing other people's photos. And of course, that means that to have that kind of connection, I need to be posting my own photos, right? Mm-hmm. But that is completely different than the goal of my Facebook page, which my Facebook page is to actually educate veterinarians on here's the 1, 2, 3 things that you need to do to respond to that Google review, or this is how you actually set up a, Yelp account, or this is how you take a video in your clinic. It's a totally different goal. So I think that's really important to assessing your return on investment. You have to know what that goal is, or you're not going to be able to do that. And I think a lot of people do that. They just are like, I'm posting everywhere. And I'm like, why? Why are you doing that? You can't track your return on investment if you don't know why you're doing it. But then when it comes to actually tracking, so I like to take a step back every once in a while and say, okay, I spent 7 hours recording these video tutorials and no one said anything, yeah. Right? That was a poor return on investment, right? But if a couple of days later, someone sends me a message and said, hey, that really helped me, and this is how my video turned out after using your tips, then that's worth it. No.
Someone trying to get through the door.
I think he's almost done. I told you we're having a lot of home renovations, and they just shut up. Hold, please. Pause the time. Okay, I think he's done. We're good.
So return on investment can also be from a time perspective. Even though you're a new grad and you don't have too much experience, not enough for recording tutorial videos, you can still put out some of your knowledge, maybe trying to educate your preferred target audience or what do you want to call it. So if you want to do mostly cats or maybe have an interest in cats, you can put out short videos or maybe short blog posts on how to help cats and how to deal with certain problems. Is that am I hearing you correctly there? Or
yeah, I mean, I think kind of going back to what you said at the beginning, it's not just a financial return on investment that you need to track and assess. It's your time too and your energy. So I think those are important budgets, right? So not just your financial budget and the tools of the trade. Like I could spend all kinds of money. I'm sure you have on some sweet podcasting equipment and, video stuff and microphone stuff and all of that. But yeah, when you're starting out, maybe that's not really worth it. But I could also spend a ton of time and maybe that's not going to pay off either. I think that's important to take into consideration. But in some degree, you're going to have to make those connections, which takes time too. That's not even just content, right? You could put out all the content you want about cats, but if you haven't connected with the right people, it's going to fall flat, right? So looking for those connections. So for instance, on Instagram, like maybe you're going to need to spend a little bit of your time making connections on Instagram, which sometimes just means following certain hashtags and researching hashtags, which ones are connecting, which ones aren't, and following other people, commenting on their content so they notice you and maybe strike up a relationship in that way. That takes some time too. And you can't just post something awesome and think it's going to go viral if you don't have any followers or connections. So it's a little bit of work, and a lot of it can be free, which is nice. Instagram is free. Everyone in the world has a smartphone pretty well. So there's a good chance that you can do this very low budget, but the time budget is one that I think we fall flat on. And really, when we think about our profession and the amount of stress we have and the amount of hours we're already working, if you're working a traditional full-time job, if you're on call, how much energy and of your life does you need to funnel in? And it's going to be different for every person, right? For me, it's it's fine. What I do obviously involves spending a lot of time on social media, but a couple times a year I take a social media digital detox, right? Because I need it. Yeah. But and I use a couple tools to like determine how much time am I spending on certain apps and on my computer, for instance. And I know what I'm okay with, and I know what I'm not, and I can tell that now, which is good. So I have to take all that info in and decide, okay, was this an appropriate use or not?
And the time that you spend, you actually are intentional on what you want to get from it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you said actually commenting on other people's posts and photos and blogs can also be a part of your strategy.
Yes. I think that's really one of the best ways to get those connections, especially if you're, I won't even say like, trying to think about how to talk about the audience size. If you're a local veterinarian and your goal is to connect with local clients, you need to realize and research what hashtags are working in your area, right? Or if you're using Facebook, for instance, maybe you want to decide, okay, I'd like to target people in this geographical area who have cats, for instance. Well, that's going to take a little bit of research of determining, okay, well, what are my client demographics, and then how many of them are in my radius, so to speak. So it depends on the platform, of course, but I think for Instagram in particular, it is good to go through and say, okay, these people are following this hashtag, and I follow them. So what interest is that? And follow, kind of chase that down a little bit. Okay, well, this hashtag also has some great accounts. Maybe I need to connect with them. And some people are very good about like, oh, this person followed me, I'm going to immediately follow them back. I'm not one of those people that's immediately going to follow somebody back. I'm going to look at their account and I'm going to say, do we have any common interests? Do we have any common, common photos or common hashtags that we're both using? If we're not, I'm not going to just automatically follow you back. I'm pretty judicious about who I allow into my feed, right? But the people that catch my eye the most are the people who have made a comment on my posts. And I know that now we have more of a connection, right? There's of course the spammers that are like, oh, this is a wonderful photo, follow me. I don't care about that. Right? I hate those. But then, a random person would be like, I really loved that photo, or that's so cool that you did that. I went there one time, or, something like that. Well, now I have a connection, and now I can put something more than just a face to that. Right. So that is a strategy of building your followers a little bit. I think a little more quality. I try to go for quality over quantity, especially if your goal is local marketing. For my clinic and for me if I was doing my personal brand was just being a veterinarian here in town, it would make no sense for me to post a photo of a cute cat and tag it Cats of Instagram and get 200 likes because people are following the Cats of Instagram. What would be much more impactful is if I posted hashtag Cats of St. Louis, because the people following that are likely in my community, right? And are more likely to really care about what I have to say because we have that common connection, and they're more likely to turn into my clients, right? So that's a much more valuable hashtag to me than a broad one. But I didn't know there was a Cats of St. Louis hashtag until that long, until recently. And it was only because I was looking at other cat accounts in this area. I was following the cat cafe that we have here in town, and I saw that hashtag, so I started using it. So all of that required just a little bit of time, and what I use the term research very loosely.
But yeah, well, in comparison to our scientific research, it's not that difficult, but it can still be give a huge return on investment in time if you find the right hashtag and you make a connection with actually clients that will try to find out what clinic you're working on and go see you instead of the neighbor. Right. For sure. And if I, as a clinic, if I commented, or as a doctor too, if I commented on their photos, they're going to be like, oh, they liked that. Oh, how nice. And, they're going to remember that name. Yeah. And hopefully make that, follow back or whatever. And hopefully that turns into something a lot more. So this actually makes me think of a story of a young veterinarian that was that is very passionate in rabbits and rabbit medicine, and she just out of her own interest, she participated in a lot of Facebook groups. And she had her knowledge there and mostly commented on other people's posts and of course posted once in a while herself. But she didn't have a blog or a huge Instagram account or a Facebook page. She was just participating and being a part of the discussion and sharing her knowledge. And she built a following of sorts. And they were going to see her, even though she moved clinic a couple of times and started working elsewhere. Then people would actually follow her around because they were talking amongst themselves on where she was working, and then they would go and find her. And so that ended up being a good return on investment in her time, but she couldn't necessarily have seen that beforehand. Sure. Well, and even, what's interesting that kind of made me think of a similar situation where I was helping this veterinarian, and he was very worried about hiring a new associate who point blank said, I do this social media on my own, my personal brand, and I want to make sure that you're okay with me doing it, and having his own account. And the owner was sort of like, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that of him, having his account outside of the clinic. And I don't know about that. But this associate had already established himself as a local authority, right? And had clients following him. And I was like, are you kidding? Like these people already know that he's the authority on this particular topic. And now if he comes there, he's going to start tagging your hospital, and they're probably going to come to you. So he's like basically bringing his following to your business. Like, that's a good thing, right? That's not a bad thing. I had some of that as well, because I started the Danish leg of this blog 3 years ago, and I had conversations with people, and bosses at that time were asking me, how do we control what you put out? Right. And that's where it gets very case by case, right? I think I see it from both sides, of course, and it's happened in our practice as well. And but I think at some point we have to weigh the pros and cons, and you can't be completely controlling. And if you've hired someone enough to trust them with your patients and your business, right, you should be able to trust them enough with their own social media. But I think it is realistic for some sort of ground rules to be established in the beginning. But as long as they are, and that both parties are comfortable, then I think it's definitely a symbiotic relationship that can be had there. So we have to round off soon, and we've talked a lot about the different stuff here and different channels and a lot of stuff. So where would you advise people to start if they have to take 1 or 2 actions to get started with this personal branding thing, and they've bought into the idea? Where do they start?
So that's a good question and a good way to end this, I suppose. But I think it's important, like we talked about, to really think about what goal and strategy you might want to have, and know that it'll probably change to some degree. But I think the big thing is to get out there. And so go ahead and set up the profile, use all of your contact information, try to remain as professional as you can, but still show your personality, and don't be afraid to do that. But I think it's important for you to spend a little time and know it takes some time. It's not going to be, you're not going to be viral overnight, right? And you have to be fluctuating. Social media is so dynamic and flexible. You really do have to be a little bit nimble in changing things. So if something doesn't work, that's okay. And just try something different and see what makes you happy and what makes the people that you're trying to connect with happy and interested, and go with that. I guess that's my big advice. I think, I could give you the technical nitty gritty of here's how you set up an Instagram business profile, but you can Google that. So I think the more important stuff is to just try to determine, what's important to you, what's going to be of value to the people that you're wanting to connect with, and go for that, but monitor it and don't be afraid to change if it's not working. Don't give up, I guess.
And maybe we should mention your Facebook group as well, because there's a lot of like-minded people in your Facebook group, the Social DVM, where you actually talk about these things, right? And other vets who are struggling with the same kind of issues, and finding an audience and finding your goal and your passion and all this sort of stuff.
Yes. All vets are welcome for sure, and that's the point of the group, is just to, as a community, to try to make this a little bit easier. Like I said, being a vet is I'm convinced the best profession in the world, but it's certainly not the easiest. And I think that anything that we can do to support each other, that's certainly my goal. For any of the stuff that I put out there, but the group in particular, I think it's not only just my ideas and my thoughts. There's a lot of other people. We're 400 or 500 people now, other veterinarians from all over the world that are doing some really cool stuff. And that's another big tip, is that what works for one doesn't work for the other. But I think having a community of ideas and inspiration may be all you need to get you started.
So, and one more time, what's the name of the group?
Oh, sorry. Yes, the name of the group is the Social DVMers, which is kind of, I wasn't feeling very creative the day that I made it, but so you can get to it from my page, my Facebook page, or any of my social accounts are the Social DVM. But if you also just look up Social DVM ERS, you'll find it.
And maybe you should mention your website as well, because you have, of course, more information on what we talked about today.
Yes, absolutely. So my website is www.thesocialdvm.com.
Right. Caitlin, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me and letting me blather on about this stuff.
And see you on social media, I guess.
I'll see you there.
Links og noter til dagens afsnit finder du på hjemmesiden på SIVP.dk/108. SIVP.dk/108. På næste søndag får du en meget klinisk relevant podcast. Vi skal snakke om otitis, eller nærmere bestemt pseudomonasører. Jeg håber meget, vi høres ved på søndag. Ha' det godt. Hej.